Hi everyone, welcome to Archetypes and Great Leaders Part 2. Today we are going to explore the archetypes in the movie Moana. I could go back to ancient stories and all those things and find the archetypes there, but it seems that over the past 10 years or so, Disney has actually managed to do a good job of bringing the archetypes back to us in stories that even our kids understand. That movie was mostly made for adults as much as kids liked it. And I promise you that if you stick through me on this video, because it's going to be a little bit longer, because we're going to navigate equality and feminism today, believe it or not. And I promise you, you will not see these issues the same way again. And I can 90% promise you that for most of you, this is going to be helpful in how you navigate this in conversations in your work, your office, your culture, and even with friends and family. Because when you take story and you use archetypes, you diffuse the automatic triggers that are inside of people and you speak to a different part of them. And that's why I always use story in my work. You have me keynote at a conference, you have me do a workshop on personal boundaries for your customer service team, doesn't matter, they're stories. And archetypes and all those kinds of things, because that is how you slip under all of the collective little programs that we have about what we should be offended about and like all the things that trigger rage. That's how you slip underneath, because you're speaking to a different part of the person. So let's talk about the story of Moana. She, very briefly, if you haven't seen it, she is sent out on a quest to go and find the heart of Te Fiti, to restore it to Te Fiti, because the legend goes that this bungling masculine demigod, Maui was his name, that he went to Te Fiti, who was the creator of all life, to the island and stole her heart from her because he wanted to give it to the humans so that they had creative power. And he's a well-intentioned demigod, but like a little bit dumb, because he just didn't really get what he was really doing. He took her heart from her, and then suddenly after he took her heart, this big monster, Taka, I think was her name, comes up, and she's fiery and she's molten lava, and she goes like she's a monster comes up. So he battles her, he gets cast onto some remote island, and this black darkness starts to slowly take over the whole earth. So Moana, even when she was little, was chosen by the ocean. She had her healthy grandmother archetype in her life to help her find her calling. Eventually she takes off against her well-intentioned parents' wishes across the ocean to find Maui, to demand that he take her to find the heart of Te Fiti and restore it. That's her mission. So here's what I want to draw a few things on. Here's what happens, and I'm going to put the link to watch these 3 minutes of the movie into the comments of this post. This video will take you to YouTube. You go back to the post, it will be there in the comments. Because after what I explained to you, if you go and watch that, most likely there are going to be shivers down your spine. There might be a tear or two of relief from somewhere deep inside of you, because you knew this already on some level. And so here's what happens in the movie. She finally wrangles the masculine bungling demigod dude. He finally decides to do the right thing. And so they get there. Moana goes up to where the island and to where Te Fiti was supposed to be, and she's gone. And it's just this cavern of the shape of a woman's body. And she's got the stone, because they found the stone. And she looks over at Taka, the monster, on the other side of the reef or whatever it was, and she sees the same shape in the stone on the shape of the monster. And she suddenly realizes that the monster was created by taking the heart from the feminine energy that is the creative force of the world. And I can't ever tell this story the bazillion times I've done it without some tears, because this is what happened with feminism and the quest for equality. So bear with me on this. So in the quest for equality, which was the right thing to do, there was some stuff to be fought for. Here's what happened. If you just look at life and men and women and balance and yin and yang and dark and light and masculine and feminine in the terms of a balance of properties and qualities, it changes the conversation. Because when I'm talking about masculine and feminine, I'm talking about the qualities and those energies that need to be balanced for things to function properly. I'm not talking specifically about men and women. That right there changes the feeling and the context of the conversation. So just imagine something with me for a minute. I won't do this perfectly, but this is going to help you navigate these things in your culture and in your own personal world, for sure. That I can promise you. I want you to imagine the feminine in the 60s and the 70s when we suddenly, after a war, were thrust into what were traditionally masculine roles. But there was no one pushing the masculine into the roles that we used to have, so we suddenly had to do both. We had to be feminine, nurturing, mama bear at home. We had to go to work and be masculine and the do, and then we were supposed to come home and still know how to be. Because feminine quality is being, the masculine is doing. And so feminism, what it had to do was really take on masculine energy and characteristics to get the job done, forcing all of the feminine type roles to take on masculine energy. Now, if you were a woman that had a balance that was, kind of 50-50 masculine, feminine, you managed better. If you were a woman that had a lot of masculine energy and didn't function as much from the feminine energy, but again, still a woman, do you get where I'm going here? Then to function in a man's world was easier for you. Did your marriage likely suffer because of that? It did. And it wasn't your fault. Because if you are a woman and your tendency is to feminine things and you're constantly in a masculine world all day and you're embodying that energy and doing those things, if you don't understand that if you have a more masculine male partner and you come home and you aren't able to magically, because no one told you how to do this, shift back into the feminine energy, there's going to be a masculine feminine imbalance in the relationship that wasn't there when you first met. Does that make sense? Like, does that take the load off a little bit? We're just talking about the balance. And one of the reasons this conversation is so important in the corporate world and in company cultures is because what needs to happen for the resolution and the balance and the accomplishment that feminism wanted to do, that all of you leaders, you all have your Anna. I've challenged you in part 1 to find your Elsa, to accomplish what you want to do in the world and in your company and in your personal life. We have to understand that for equality and for feminism to truly achieve equality, we have to come back around and find our power that lies in the feminine energies and balance it with the masculine. There was the detour that was taken and it was all very masculine and had to be done. And now what needs to be done is there needs to be a shift so that when you're looking at, what is often criticized as an executive board that's mostly dudes, and that's not equality, there's only one woman on the board. What you need to be able to look at that with is to not feel guilty, but to look at it and analyze it from a different perspective. On that board, are a lot of the men really kind of have a bit of a balance of masculine and feminine in them? Or is their balance a little more, some of them more feminine and less masculine, and then a couple of people are very masculine and less feminine? Is there a balance of those energies? Because you can have a very normal man, so to speak, and I'm even trying to be careful with my words because I don't want to offend anyone, even though I'm just trying to help. But let's just say a typically masculine man that has developed his feminine characteristics and energy so that he has a balance, so that he has a little bit of the masculine, okay, shit needs to get done, this is the plan, these are the goals, but he also has a little bit of a mama bear quality archetype that is healthy inside of him, that also knows how to make employees feel cared about. Do you know what I mean? So then it becomes a question of, do we have a masculine feminine balance on this team? Not do we have a men and women balance on this team? And I promise you, if that's what you start talking about, you will offend less people. You will find yourself automatically with more women in those roles when you recognize, oh, this, like these dudes are great, but there's not enough of the feminine qualities that can balance the nurturing and care that needs to be in our culture, balanced with the masculine don't coddle them too much. This came up in a podcast I did with Women in Safety a while ago, and it really seemed to resonate. So I want to bring that conversation in. I could talk about this forever, but I don't want this video to go a whole 20 minutes or anything like that. So I want you to understand, so those qualities, when we took women who were predominantly feminine and forced them into masculine roles to try to gain equality that way, we missed something. And I'm not pointing fingers. We probably needed to miss it for a period of time, but if we keep missing it now, we're going to keep failing at what the end result was meant to be. Does that make sense? So now, this is where we get back to Moana. So let's just say this bungling masculine demigod who was not ill-intentioned, but who was blamed for being a dick, but not necessarily was. Okay, we've done that to men too. When he took that heart from the woman god, he took her heart, he took her femininity and wanted to give it to the world and wanted to help them be equal that way. She, this god, lost her feminism, moved into a 100% masculine role, which turned her into a monster that started hurting the earth. I'm not saying feminism has hurt the earth, by the way, just so we're clear. But if you watch this clip that I'm going to have in the comments, you're going to feel what I am trying to say here, because there's only so much words can actually do. When feminism took feminine out of women to create equality, we lost something very powerful, and it's why now it's not working. It's why we got to a certain point, and now no matter what we do, there's something that isn't working and something that isn't sticking, and that's what it is. So if we can change this conversation, I feel like we can figure it out. And when you watch this clip, you will see that Moana has a stone. She goes to where Te Fiti used to be. It's this empty cavern of a woman's silhouette, a woman's body. And she turns around at Te Kā the monster, and she sees on her, in her fiery, molten self, a little symbol right here. That is what the symbol is on the little stone that she has. And she realizes, oh, that's Te Fiti. That raging, defensive bitch, because we have all called women in these situations that are struggling with these things a bitch. Then she realizes that she's actually Te Fiti, the giver and creator of all life on earth, and she was only missing her heart, her feminine balance that she needed to do the things that she needed to do to heal the earth and to provide life, which is what's in a woman's body. Like, you can't take that out. You can have different balances of masculine and feminine. You can call yourself any gender you want. What you're defining is the balance of masculine and feminine energy that you have in you. Okay? So she then, in this beautiful, one of my favorite scenes, and I'm just thinking about it and it always makes me cry, she realizes who she is. And she says to the water, let her come to me. And the water parts, because Te Kā can't touch water to get back to her home. Parts the water. And this raging, fiery monster sees that Moana has her heart, and she is consumed with needing that back. And so I feel like that's what's happening in feminism right now. There is an evolution coming, and we want our heart back. We want our feminine qualities back because they are what feed us and they are what balance us in whatever balance inside of us that we need. And then when that happens and she gets her heart back, it's just the most beautiful scene Disney's ever created as far as I'm concerned. And then all of a sudden, all of her green and her life force comes back and she balances. And do you know what she does at the end of this scene? If you watch the whole thing, the bungling Maui demigod who does the right thing, he ends up getting his power, his masculine strength, like his hook that he has, which is kind of like his sword. Te Fiti, now healed and in her power, is able to give the masculine demigod his strength and power back because it goes back and forth. So the whole story that you watch in this movie is exactly what has happened with men and women and masculine and feminine in our society. This masculine energy tried to help everyone, ended up skewing the masculine feminine balance, and then the woman part of our society got really wounded because we were missing our heart. And then in the end, if you watch the whole thing, Maui deserted Moana initially, but then he came back and he sacrificed the last of his power to distract Te Kā, the evil person, which you'll see this is what happened at the very beginning of this clip, to distract her to try to help Moana restore the heart to the feminine. He hasn't realized that the monster he's looking at is who actually needs to be healed. But he gives his all anyway because, masculine and men are as good and beautiful creatures as women are. But there's just been this big bungling of all of the things, and it is no one particular person or one gender's fault. It is an imbalance. And if you start to talk about these things in this way, everything changes. And then Te Fiti gets her heart back, and then she heals the masculine. And then OMG, like the whole conversation in our culture, in our society, in your company changes completely.